behind them. And they pulled over, and the driver said, "Officer, was I going too fast? I think I was going the speed limit." He said, "Ma'am, you were barely crawling." She said, "Well, I was doing what the sign said. I was doing 23. He said, "Ma'am, that's the road sign. That's not the speed sign." And he looked in the back, and the two ladies in the back were their hair was on end. They were just petrified. And he said, "Are you all right?" And they said, "Yes, we just came off of 156. That's an old joke. I heard that 30 years ago. And I don't know anybody that would go from Cal Vesta to Cimarron to have lunch, but there might be somebody. From almost the very first Sunday that we were here, I wore a shirt similar to this. It may have been this very shirt. And I talked about being hope dealers. And I talked about how in our world we have drug dealers and we have all sorts of people who are doing all sorts of things, but our world and our communities need people who bring them hope. Today's sermon is about hope. This mental health series that we've been on, this is the 6th week. And we've covered some pretty heavy things like suicide and depression and being overwhelmed and burnout and a variety of things. But we began the series by saying it's okay to not be okay. And we played that great song by Jelly Roll, Jelly Roll, at the end of the service. It's been a privilege to share these 6 sermons. The response, honestly, has been overwhelming. And every time I do a mental health series, I honestly get more response than I do for practically any other series we do, because we all realize we all have weeds in our garden. And we may show people the roses, but underneath those roses are the weeds in our garden. But today I have good news. There's a hope for you and me. I want to look at just one verse today. We're going to focus on one verse, Psalm 42:5. We're going to begin our series of sermons on the Psalms next week, but we've already preached on Psalm 42 a few years ago. But I just want to focus on this one verse. "Why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God, for I will yet praise him, my Savior and my God." We have hope for the weeds in our garden, and that hope is we have a good gardener. We have a great gardener. We have a gardener who knows how to kill weeds. We have a gardener who knows how to yank out weeds. We have a gardener who knows how to get rid of weeds. So I want to unpack this one verse. Why am I downcast? That's the $64,000 question for today. Why am I depressed? Why am I anxious? Why am I lonely? Why am I overwhelmed and maybe burned out? The psalmist David said, put your hope in God. So I have 2 points for the sermon. The first point has a whole slew of different things underneath it. You have your outline, so let's begin with the first one. What are the roots that may cause myself to be downcast? What are the roots that cause us to be downcast? The first one is bitterness. Bitterness. Bitterness will kill you. We live in a time where everyone tells us to get offended at everything and never let it go. When you hang on to an offense, it eats at you and it eats you alive. When I was a young youth minister in Oregon, I went to like my 5th board meeting, and I heard one of the elders yell at the preacher, "I remember what you did 8 years ago." And I thought, wow, he's never let that go. It's toxic for the soul. There are horrible things that maybe have done to you, some by your families, some by friends. Maybe you've been betrayed. Maybe you've been neglected. Maybe you've been abandoned. Maybe you went through a divorce. But Jesus says we have to forgive. Then he shows us how, by forgiving murderers and adulterers and thieves and prostitutes, and he commands us to do the same. Many of us need to be released from our bitterness, because if we don't, we will become downcast, and the weeds in our garden will continue to grow. Hebrews 12, 14, and 15. Let me read this powerful verse for you, 2 verses. Make every effort to live in peace with everyone and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one falls short of the grace, and that no, get the words, bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many. All right, second one, worry. I know there's not a person in this room that's worried about a thing. You can just tune out, because I know it doesn't apply to you. Worry is when we choose to fixate on the what-ifs of life. Trust me, there are a lot of what-ifs. What if I get sicker? What if my kid needs braces and I can't afford braces right now? What if because their teeth are crooked, they never marry, and I never have grandkids, and they're still in my basement when they're 45 years old? What if the market crashes? What if I crash? When it comes to worry, do you know what Jesus says? Don't. One word. Don't worry. Matthew 6, the middle chapter of that great Sermon on the Mount. At the end of that chapter, he talks about all the things that we worry about. And then he says in verse 633, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. All right, the third root, laziness. Did it get awkward in here right now? Did I maybe cross a line? The Bible talks a lot about the sluggard who just lays around working the system and expecting everyone else to take care of them. God wired us to work, to be productive, and that's why we feel so guilty when we binge watch 24 hours of Netflix. And don't tell me some of you haven't done that, especially during COVID. Or staying up till 3 o'clock to play a video game. I remember, and now we're talking like 1982. I remember the day our family bought an Atari 2600, I think it was called. And I sat up, this is your preacher being as honest as he can be. I literally sat up till 3 o'clock in the morning playing video games. And Brenda said to me, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'll be fine. I'll be able to go to work." If you are we're not saying you can't play video games, but there's no value in playing video games till 3 o'clock in the morning. Just saying, I've been there. Be honest about it. All right. God made us for work, for accomplishment. Fourth root, guilt. We are carrying around guilt. When Jesus died on the cross, he died to take our guilt, to carry our guilt. We go through life carrying guilt. We carry shame. We don't want anyone to know who we really are, because if they did, they wouldn't like us. And certainly they wouldn't respect us. Maybe it's that DUI that you had years ago, or the affair that you had, or maybe you have identified as inmate 67428, or that you went to meetings where you introduced yourself, "Hello, my name is, and I'm an alcoholic." Or it's gambling, or it's drugs, or it's pornography. You have let those labels define you. There's a reason we sang the song during the prayer time that we sang, because God calls us by a different name than all of those labels. Jesus went to the cross to take us and set it, as the song said, set us free. Set us free from the guilt. Jesus is the good gardener who wipes the slate clean. All right, the fifth root is perfectionism. Nothing is ever good enough for you. Nothing. No one is ever good enough for you. In fact, you don't think you're good enough. So years ago, I attended a conference in California with a group of people from southwest Kansas, and a wonderful guy named Henry Cloud spoke. Dr. Henry Cloud and John Townsend wrote the famous book Boundaries, if you've ever read the book Boundaries, and he's written lots of other books. And he was speaking to us that afternoon, and he said, "I want to tell you about an encounter I had with a lady who was a perfectionist. Everything about her had to be just exactly right. The hair had to be exactly right. The clothes had to be exactly right. She had to accessorize just exactly to the T. But she still wasn't happy about herself." He then told us that he said to her, "I'm leaving from this appointment right now. When we finish, I'm going to the University of Southern California to lecture 500 college students at the University of Southern California." He said, "I'm going directly there." And then he said he took his cup of coffee, his large cup of coffee, and he took that cup of coffee and he poured it on the top of his head. And it ran all over his suit, all over his tie, all over his clothes. And he said, "You know, I'm going to be fine because I don't have to be perfect." And then, to the shock of all of us in the room, he took his cup of coffee in that setting and poured it right on top of his head in front of every one of us. And it ran all over his beautiful white shirt and his tie. I will never forget that moment. In fact, the next year, when Henry came to the conference again, he came every year, and I got a chance to visit with him, and I reminded him of how powerful an image he left in my brain about those who deal with perfectionism. Trust me, folks, when I don't deal with perfectionism, it's not my thing. But Romans 5 says, therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through Lord Jesus Christ. You see, we have peace because of the good gardener who says, don't worry about perfectionism. All right, the sixth root. The sixth root is something horrible happened to you. The sixth root is something horrible happened to you. Some of us in this room have taken hit after hit after hit after hit. Maybe you were abused. Maybe as a child you were raped or experienced violence or bullying in your home. I can't tell you, I can hardly stand to say those words. Many times when we unearth all of our mental health struggles, it's because of what somebody else has done to us. That's why we need to release it. Because we have a good gardener who can handle that stuff. Seventh root, we've talked about it several times throughout the series. It's called isolation. And I've reminded us since 2020 with COVID, we have many people who have pulled away from meaningful connections. We may look all right on the outside, but in the inside, we are anything but all right. We need each other. It is time to get more connected with your church family. And if you have any question about what group would be the right group for you, please see Vaughn or myself. We would be happy to connect you with a group. And I'm hoping in the fall, as we ramp up all of our small groups and Bible studies and all of those things, that we can even have some more groups. All right, number H. The eighth root is ingratitude or self-pity. If you are going through life saying, woe is me, my life is horrible, I certainly deserve better than I got, that thought will slowly rot you to death. So our good gardener says, give thanks in all circumstances. Be thankful that God is with you, walking beside you in all of those circumstances. You see, happiness doesn't make you grateful, but gratefulness will make you happy. Let me say that again. Happiness doesn't make you grateful, but gratefulness makes you happy. The ninth root, I. God can't use me anymore. Some of you are feeling that you cannot be used by God because of your age and maybe some limitations that come with age. Others of us in the room are feeling that we are such damaged goods that God could never use us. So let me address the second one first, and then I'll talk about the first one. I think if you've been into church long, you know that during the time of the trials of Jesus before he was crucified, 3 times Peter was asked, did he know him? And Peter said, nope, I'm not one of them. Nope. And then the rooster crows. You remember the story. And I ask you, can you get more damaged than that? So damaged that you have denied Christ? And you wonder, is there anything Christ could possibly do with my life? I'm so damaged. I denied him. I love the stories, the narrative of the New Testament. And we talk about that scene, but you can't forget John 21, and I think it's going to be up here on the screen. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him notice the third time for the 3 denials. "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." But let me continue. "Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hand, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus said this is to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. And then Jesus said, don't miss these words, "Follow me." This restoration of Peter made it possible for Peter, who had denied Christ, who was certainly damaged, to do the amazing things that happened in the book of Acts, records it, in the early church, that Peter did. You need to know whatever the weeds in your garden are, God can use you in a powerful way. I hope many of you will accept the forgiveness that Jesus offers. Maybe it'll cause you to attend the Growing Strong class a week from Saturday, where we'll talk about being fully committed to Jesus. And many of you have talked to me about church membership. What do I need to do about church membership? Or what do I need to know? What do I need to do about baptism? I've got lots of questions. So I really hope that you'll come to the Growing Strong class. If Jesus could restore Peter, who had denied him 3 times, he can restore anyone in this room who feel they are such damaged goods that God could not use them. Now, to those of you who are feeling that God can't use you anymore because you're of an advanced age, I want to give you my personal testimony. I told you a few weeks ago that there would come a time when I would share more details about what went on with my health from January till now. So if you will give me a few minutes and a few boxes of Kleenex, I'll try to share it. Over the weekend of January 4th and 5th, we had an ice storm. And there was no church on that Sunday. But for whatever reason, I became sick, and I never sick. And I said to Brenda, I said, I don't know what's wrong, but something's wrong. I don't know what it is. I was so sick I couldn't even perform Nancy Galloway's funeral. I had to ask a preacher friend of mine to do the service. Sunday afternoon, I called my personal doctor, Dr. Brian Stuckey. I was his pastor for 12 years. I know him very well, he and Danielle and all their wonderful kids. And I said, Brian, I am so sick, and I don't want to go to the ER, but is there any way you can fit me in on Monday morning? So Monday morning, he called me at 8 o'clock and he said, come on in. I'll have you see my PA. I saw the PA. She said, something's happened to your right kidney. We don't know what it is, so we need you to go over to the ER and get a CAT scan of your kidney. So I got the scan done at the hospital, and they said I had 3 large kidney stones. Now, mind you, let me just see a show of hands. Anybody in the room ever have kidney stones? Yeah. How painful are they? Beyond painful. You're not going to believe this. I had no pain. I had no symptoms because they were stuck, embedded in the upper part of the kidney. They weren't down in the tube where they would cause pain. I was just feeling tired. They said, we're going to have to fly you out, but there are no beds in Kansas, so we're looking for a hospital in Denver or in Colorado to send you. And literally 24 hours I stayed in the ER while they found me a bed. Finally, I was life flighted to St. Anthony North Hospital in Denver. It's a wonderful hospital. Cheryl Holloman, she's here today, was visiting me at the ER. And they told us that Brenda could not go on the plane. There wasn't room for her. She's the smallest thing in the world, but they couldn't get her on the plane. So Cheryl said, I will drive her to Denver. And I said, wow, thank you, Cheryl. And of course, they had to have a flat tire on the way, but that's neither here nor there. So while they're driving to Denver, I'm flying to Denver. Now you need to know, I tell people all the time, you have got to get the insurance that covers you for these sorts of flights. They're $80,000, folks. I haven't paid a dime. Did not have to pay a dime on that. Other things I did, but not that. So a flight crew literally from North Platte flew down here, picked me up in Garden City, and flew me to Denver. That's a fact. As soon as I got to the hospital, they put a tube in my right kidney to drain off the infection, because my kidney stones had caused massive infection. And we had to deal with the infection before we could remove the stones. But soon, within an hour or two, sepsis had taken over my body. An hour after the surgery, as sepsis was raging, that's an infection, trust me, you don't want to have. I had the first of 4 rapid responses that were called on me during that week. About the same time that Brenda and Cheryl arrived, only to be, they were there, they saw me for a few minutes, and they were immediately rushed out of the room as 15 to 18 people came in, literally saving my life. I cannot imagine how scary it was for Cheryl and Brenda as they watched from the outside as they tried to stabilize me. Over the next week, I was poked and prodded with everything, as sepsis continued to rage in my body. Vaughn came, other people came. The unfortunate thing about this sepsis infection is it caused my heart to go into very unhealthy rhythms. So most of that 7 days I was between VTAC, which is near death, flatline, to AFib, where your heart's just beating out of control. After a week, they finally did a stress test, and they shocked my heart back into sinus rhythm. And the next day they did a heart cath. So I was there 9 days, and then they said, we're going to send you to a physical rehab because you're so weak. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's hard to imagine how in 1 week that could happen, but I was so weak I could not even roll over in bed. So they sent me to a rehab center. I was there 16 days. I went from not being able to roll over. They said to us as we were being discharged, you have to have a walker. Well, I don't have a walker. So I said to my family, I said, go by the church. We've got a couple of walkers we loan to people. I have to walk out with a walker. So they come, they bring the walker. I carry the walker out 16 days later, I carry the walker in my hands as I walk out. All I had to do was have the walker. I didn't have to walk with the walker. And we were on our way home. From there, I waited a couple more weeks, and they finally took the 3 stones out. We went back to Denver over Valentine's. I told Brenda those 3 stones are my gift to you for Valentine's Day. I don't understand why she wasn't excited. And I'm sorry this is taking so long, folks, but I want to say this, I meant to say it earlier. I'm not telling you my story because I want your pity. I don't. I'm telling this story because I believe, as your pastor, you have a right to know how your pastor is. And so I'm trying to be as transparent as I can be. I came home and I started physical therapy as an outpatient at Excelicare, and went several weeks. And on March 20th, I noticed I was a little bit short of breath, and I said to my physical therapist, I said, I am just so short of breath. He said, Bob, you need to call your cardiologist when you leave here. So I called my cardiologist in Wichita. They said, go to the ER and get checked out. So I went to the ER and got checked out. And from about 6 till midnight, maybe a little after midnight, they ran all sorts of tests, all sorts of labs, all sorts of x-rays and scans. And they said, there's something odd going on, but we're not sure what it is. So we definitely want to keep you overnight. And then she said to me, she said, what's that paper right there? And I said, well, that's an order from my doctor in Denver to get a CAT scan to see if I have any more stones. And I said, I've got an appointment later this week. Oh, we've got nothing to do. Let's do it right now. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, they did a CAT scan at me. And wouldn't you know, it found more stones. So guess what? A few hours later, I'm on a flight again back to Denver. Where again, at this hospital, different hospital, at Good Samaritan, equally great hospital, they put another tube in my kidney to drain the infection, and of course, sepsis began to do its thing again. those life-threatening rhythms began. And at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, March 25th, I had a cardiac arrest. The leadership has known that I had a cardiac arrest, but most of you did not know that. It is the strangest feeling to wake up to people pushing on your chest and wondering, why are they pushing on my chest? For 1 minute and 22 seconds, I had no pulse. I was considered dead. My wife is down the hall as they ushered her out. Let me just say a couple things. They told me that when they do CPR, it's their goal to break your ribs. They said, fortunately for you, we did not break your ribs. But I want to tell you, my ribs hurt so bad for about 5 days, I could hardly move. And any of these TV shows that show anybody having CPR and the next day they're carrying 50-pound bags of cement, it ain't happening, folks. I'm just going to tell you, it just isn't going to happen. I was there for a few more days. Things seemed to stabilize again, and they sent me again to a rehab center. So why do I share all that? And there's a little bit more I may or may not share. I share that because you need to know, even before the cardiac arrest and the CPR that revived me, I was absolutely convinced that God was not through with me. I didn't know what God had planned for me, but God was not through with me, and God was not through with me at the Church of the Brethren in Garden City, Kansas. All told, I spent 32 days in the hospital and 31 days in rehab centers. Through it all, you have been faithful and encouraging us with cards. Now, I have a bag with the cards. I've saved every card. One family here in the audience, they aren't even a member of our church, sent me one card every single day for 10 days. Another family in our church had their 3 young children, each of their 3 young children, fill out a Get Well card, and I have those cards. And Mama filled out a Get Well card. I cannot tell you how grateful we are for the support and the encouragement of every single member of this church. So Tuesday, I had what I think will be my last procedure. It may not be my last procedure, but I think it will be. I've been in atrial fib since I left Denver in May. And so on Tuesday, they cardioverted me back into sinus rhythm. And the only negative side of all of that is my heart is beating very slowly. Very slowly. So I checked it while Lacey was doing the children's story. It's beating 41 beats a minute. That's how slow my pulse is. It was slower than that after they did it, and that's why they kept me another day. But I am on, you need to know this. People ask, well, Bob, are you going to have a heart attack? You know, and I have to admit, after the cardiac arrest, when I would go to bed the next couple of nights, I thought, wow, am I going to wake up tomorrow? My heart is perfectly fine. You need to know that. whatever problems there are is the electronic side inside of it. And right now, they've taken me off all cardiac meds. I have no heart meds at all. That's how good my heart is. And you need to know that, because I don't want you to think, oh, Bob's going to have a heart attack tomorrow. Bob isn't going to have a heart attack. I might, but I'm not. I cannot tell you how grateful I am to Cheryl and to Vaughn and to our family who came visit after visit after visit. I mean, Cheryl spent 4 days in Denver. Who does that? Vaughn was there time after time after time after time. Jason Crockett was in Denver, went completely from one side of Denver to the other side of Denver just to see me as I recovered. But here's what you need to know above everything else, and I know I've gone long, and I'm sorry. God is not through using you either for his kingdom, just like he's not through using me. All right. Took us 40 minutes. We finally got to point number 2. I'm going to make it quick. So what do you do to put your hope in a good gardener? There are 3 things. You all know them. We talk about them all the time. So I'm going to quickly go through them. First of all, you need to make scripture reading a daily part of your life. I cannot tell you how helpful it is. We have people in this room who have read through the entire Bible 7, 8, 9 times in the last couple of years. Their lives are changed because of it. If you read 3 chapters a day, you will read through the entire Bible in a year if you're faithful to it. But even if you read just a chapter or 2, it will help you. Help you, especially if you focus on the New Testament, the Gospels, and the life of the early church. It will help you. All right. B, we need to worship weekly. This is a no-guilt church. I tell people all the time, we have no guilt. If you are gone on vacation, if you are out of town, there is no guilt that you are not in church. But if you are healthy, you need to be in church. And when we are in church, I'm going to urge every one of us. I know we sing some songs. Some of our songs today were brand new to some of you. I really urge you to learn those songs, to get more involved in worship. Some of you are saying, but Bob, I don't sing very well. Let me just tell you, those of us up on the stage, no, some of you don't sing very well. Because the psalmist said, don't worry about it, just make a joyful noise. Okay? Psalm 34:1 says, I will extol the Lord at all times. His praise will always be on my lips. I want us to focus on worship and Jesus. And I want you, if you have a tendency to focus on the mistakes that are made on the stage by the person giving the children's story or the worship leader or me, because I make mistakes all the time, please don't focus on them and don't make it a conversation. You're here to worship. We are better than that. And God's church needs to gather for worship for Him and Him alone. All right. C, we need to lean into community. Talk about it all the time. I love our community of faith. I love that it's a growing community of faith. It's not perfect. If you are looking for the perfect church, just go out the door, because I can tell you right now, we're not perfect. As I reminded every one of us weeks ago, it's okay to not be okay. And I even asked you, is it okay for your preacher to not be okay? Because some days your preacher's not okay. In 1969, I know that some of you aren't old enough to know what 1969 was. The singing group The Hollies had a song that was very popular. It reminded us about how important it was to walk with each other and to carry each other's burdens. Can I ask anybody, can you tell me what the song is? He ain't heavy, he's my brother. You remember? Now you're going to sing that song the rest of the day. That's my gift to you. You need to know that your brothers and sisters in this room need you to help carry some of their burdens. Long before the Hollies or the wonderful man who started Boys Town, because that's where the phrase comes from. Long before that, Paul wrote to the church in Galatia, and here's what he wrote. Brothers and sisters, if anyone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. Restore them. But watch yourself, or you also may be tempted. And then verse 2, it's highlighted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. And finally, the conclusion is very simple. We just need to fully trust and fully be committed to Jesus Christ. Now we're going to transition right now into communion. And I know some of you are visiting today, and you need to know that our communion is open to anyone who is a believer in Christ. You don't have to be a member of our church. And as it is passed, we will pause and have a moment of reflection. Then we'll all take the bread together. Then we'll all take the cup together. So let's sing our song of leading us to communion it's a wonderful song by the Sidewalk Prophets called Come to the Table. And we'll only sing a little bit of it.